My grandmother's will reading was supposed to be private, but the attorney accidentally sent me the real version first. I was 23, sitting in my cramped studio apartment, eating mac and cheese for the fourth night straight, when the email arrived from Sterling and Hayes Law Group. The subject line read, "Confidential estate documents for Alice Thompson." Grandma Alice had died 3 weeks earlier. Cancer, they said, quick and peaceful. I'd been her favorite grandchild, the only one who visited every Sunday, who listened to her stories about the old country, who didn't roll my eyes when she spoke of family curses and blood debts. While my cousins called her crazy behind her back, I genuinely enjoyed our conversations. She'd make tea in her antique china cups and tell me about our ancestors, old traditions, things that went bump in the night. "The world is stranger than people want to believe, Olivia," she'd always say, her weathered hands wrapped around her teacup. "Our family has seen things, done things, that would make normal folks run screaming." I'd always assumed she was just eccentric. Old people got like that sometimes, mixing reality with imagination. But now, staring at my laptop screen in my tiny apartment with its peeling wallpaper and broken heating, I was beginning to understand that maybe Grandma hadn't been as crazy as everyone thought. I opened the attachment, expecting the usual legal jargon about her modest savings and the old Victorian house she'd left me. The house had been in our family for generations, and everyone assumed it would go to me since I was the only grandchild who actually visited. My mother had been dropping hints for months about how I could finally move out of this dump and have a real home. Instead, I found something that made my blood freeze. Final will and testament actual version. Do not send to family. My hands shook as I scrolled down. The first page looked normal enough. Standard legal language about being of sound mind and body, revoking all previous wills, the usual stuff. Then I reached the section titled Special Bequests and Confessions. To my granddaughter, Olivia Me Miller, I leave not only my house at 1247 Elmwood Lane, but also the responsibility of maintaining our family's most sacred duty. In the basement, behind the false wall marked with the raven symbol, you'll find them. 7 urns, 7 souls, 7 debts that must be paid monthly for as long as our bloodline exists. My laptop screen blurred as tears I didn't realize I was crying clouded my vision. This had to be some kind of sick joke. Maybe one of my cousins had hacked into the attorney system as a twisted prank. Caleb had always been jealous that Grandma favored me. But I kept reading, unable to stop myself. Each month on the new moon, you must feed them. 1 cup of blood from the living, 1 lock of hair from the willing, 1 tear from the grieving. The ritual must be performed in the basement chamber at exactly midnight. If you fail even once, they will be released, and our family line will suffer for 7 generations. This is why your grandfather never came home from the war. He was the keeper before me, and when he left for overseas, I was too young to take over. The binding weakened. This is why your uncle died in that car accident when he was only 19. This is why your mother can't have children after you, despite trying for 20 years. The room spun around me. I had to grip the edges of my desk to keep from falling off my chair. My mother had never told me she'd been trying to have more children. I'd always assumed I was an only child by choice, not by some supernatural curse. I kept reading, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. The attorney has been instructed to give you a sanitized version that mentions only the house and modest savings. He doesn't know about the basement. He doesn't know about the responsibility I'm passing to you. But you need to know the truth before the fake reading tomorrow. You need to understand what you're inheriting. The document continued with details that made my skin crawl. Feeding times always at midnight on the new moon, specific incantations in what looked like Latin mixed with something much older. Instructions on how to recognize if the containment was weakening, what to do if one of the souls escaped, and photographs. Dozens of instant film camera photos of 7 ancient urns, each carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Each urn had a nameplate beneath it in the photos. Silas the Strangler died 1823. Beatrice the Poisoner died 1834. Arthur the Drowner died 1841. And 4 others whose names were harder to read in the dim lighting of the photos. Below each photo was a handwritten description of their crimes and how they died. Silas had killed 12 children in a Salem, MA workhouse before being hanged. Beatrice had poisoned 3 husbands and a dozen rivals before drinking her own concoction. Arthur had drowned entire families by sabotaging their boats, claiming their souls for some dark master. These 7 souls were bound to our family in 1847 by your great-great-grandmother, Eleanor Thompson. She made a pact with an entity that dwells in the marsh behind our property. Her husband was dying of consumption, her children were starving, and winter was killing everything. The entity offered her a bargain: prosperity and protection for her bloodline in exchange for eternal service as guardians of these 7 murderers' souls. I had to stop reading to run to the bathroom and throw up. When I came back, wiping my mouth with a shaky hand, I forced myself to continue. Eleanor agreed. The entity gave her these 7 souls, murderers from the old country, bound to urns made from their own bones. As long as someone from our family feeds them monthly and keeps them contained, our line will be blessed with good fortune, wealth, health, protection from harm, success in all endeavors. But if the ritual is ever broken, if the souls are released, they will hunt down every living descendant and drag them back to serve the entity in the marsh forever. I have been the keeper for 43 years, since I was 22 years old. My mother did it for 37 years before me. Her grandmother did it for 29 years before her. The house ages you, Olivia. The constant proximity to those trapped souls drains the life from you slowly. This is why I look older than my years. This is why I never traveled, never remarried after your grandfather disappeared. This is why every keeper in our family has died before age 60. My phone rang, making me jump so hard I nearly threw the laptop across the room. The caller ID showed my mother's number. Olivia, her voice sounded strained, worried. I just got the strangest call from that attorney. He said there was some confusion about Grandma's will and wanted to confirm your address for tomorrow's reading. Did you receive anything early by mistake? I stared at the laptop screen, at the words rewriting my entire understanding of my family, our history, my future. No, I lied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Nothing yet, good. I was worried there might be some clerical error. You know how these old attorneys can be with technology. She paused. Are you okay, honey? You sound strange, just tired. Long day at work, well, get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be emotional enough without you being exhausted. After she hung up, I returned to the document. The next section, Instructions for the New Keeper, contained detailed diagrams of the basement layout, the ritual chamber, the feeding ceremony. There were warnings. Never try to communicate with the souls, never attempt to open the urns, never stay away from the house for more than 6 days. If you leave for longer than a week, the entity will begin calling you back. The compulsion starts as a gentle pull, a homesickness you can't shake. By day 5, it becomes physical pain. By day 6, you'll be in agony. By day 7, you'll either return willingly, or the entity will drag you back itself. The final section was a personal letter addressed directly to me. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then my time as keeper has ended, and yours must begin. I know this seems impossible, terrifying, insane. I felt the same way when my mother left me this burden at age 25. I raged against it, denied it, tried to run from it 3 separate times. The entity brought me back each time, and the punishment grew worse. The first time I tried to leave, I made it to Philadelphia before the pain became unbearable. I came back after 4 days, thinking I could just visit the house briefly and then leave again. But once you accept the role of keeper, the house doesn't let go easily. The second time, I tried to bring your grandfather with me. We packed everything and drove to Florida, thinking distance would break whatever hold the house had on me. We lasted 6 days before I collapsed. Your grandfather carried me back, and that's when the entity marked him. 2 weeks later, he was drafted. He never came home from overseas. The third time, I tried to destroy everything. I brought gasoline and matches to the basement, determined to burn the whole place down and end the cycle forever. But when I reached for the first urn, something happened. I saw what would happen if I succeeded. I saw our entire family line. You, your mother, your cousins, everyone dying in horrible accidents within the year. The entity showed me exactly how each death would occur. So I put down the matches and accepted my fate. You have 3 choices, and each one comes with consequences. First, you can burn this will, pretend you never saw it, and attend tomorrow's fake reading. You'll walk away with nothing, but you'll also walk away free. The sanitized will only mentions a small inheritance and some personal effects. Eventually, someone else in the family will discover the truth when the protection starts failing and strange things begin happening. It might be your mother, your cousin Caleb, or some future grandchild born decades from now. But it won't be you. You can live a normal life, have a family, travel the world, do whatever you want. The price is that someone else will eventually pay for your freedom. Second, you can try to break the binding entirely. I've researched this option for decades. It requires destroying all 7 urns simultaneously while performing a specific count ritual during a total solar eclipse. The next eclipse visible from our location won't occur for 37 years, in 2062. If you succeed, our family will be free forever. But if you fail, if even one urn remains intact, every person with Thompson blood will die within a year. Every single one. The entity will make sure of it. Third, you can accept the responsibility and become the new keeper. The house will provide for you. You'll never want for money, food, or shelter. The family blessing will continue. Protection from harm, success in endeavors, good health for everyone except yourself. But you'll also never truly be free. As I mentioned, the longest any keeper has lived away from the house is 6 days. After that, the entity starts calling you back with increasing force. I chose the third option because I was young and afraid, and couldn't bear the thought of condemning my entire family. I've regretted it every day since, but I've also protected everyone I love for 4 decades. Your cousin Caleb graduated from Yale School of Medicine. Your mother has lived a long, healthy life, despite her fertility struggles being supernaturally imposed. You've been safe, successful, and happy your entire life because of the protection the entity provides. The choice is yours, but know that if you accept, there are strict rules that cannot be broken. Never let anyone else enter the basement chamber. The souls will try to possess them. Never miss a feeding. Even one missed ritual weakens the binding significantly. Never try to communicate with the souls. They are master manipulators and will promise you anything to be released. Never leave the house empty for more than 6 days. The entity considers abandonment a breach of contract. Never try to research the entity itself. Some knowledge is too dangerous. And never ever try to open the urns. The souls inside are not fully contained. They're compressed, concentrated evil. Opening even one would release something that could devastate an entire city. If you accept this duty, there will be a key taped under the kitchen sink in a small magnetic box. The basement door is hidden behind the bookshelf in the study. Press on the spine of Moby Dick on the 3rd shelf from the top, and the entire bookcase will swing inward on hidden hinges. The first feeding is due on the new moon, which is in 5 days. I timed my death carefully to give you time to decide and prepare. The ritual supplies are kept in a locked cabinet in the basement chamber. The key to that cabinet is hidden inside the old music box on my bedroom dresser, the one that plays Moonlight Sonata. Wind it up and let it play completely through. When the music stops, press down on the dancing ballerina figure and the bottom will open. Inside the cabinet, you'll find silver bowls for the blood, a ceremonial knife that's been blessed to cause minimal pain, vials for tears, and pouches for hair. There are also detailed instructions for the incantations and timing. I love you, child. I'm sorry this burden has fallen to you. I'm sorry I couldn't find another way. I'm sorry for all the secrets, all the lies, all the years I spent preparing you for this without you knowing. But I'm also proud of you. You're stronger than you know, braver than you realize, and more capable than you believe. If you choose to accept this responsibility, you won't be alone. Every keeper before you has left guidance in the journals hidden throughout the house. We've all faced the same struggles, the same temptations, the same despair. You'll find comfort in our shared experience. If you choose differently, I understand. I won't blame you. I'll love you regardless. But please, whatever you decide, don't take too long. The entity grows restless when there's no keeper, and restless entities do unpredictable things. With all my love and deepest regrets, Grandmother Alice. P.S. If you choose to become keeper, burn the fake will after tomorrow's reading. And whatever you do, don't let that attorney know what you really inherited. Some secrets are too dangerous to share. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned and my vision blurred. Outside my apartment window, the city continued its normal rhythm. Cars honking, people walking, life proceeding as if the entire universe hadn't just tilted on its axis. But as I sat there in my tiny apartment with its broken heating and peeling wallpaper, I began to remember things, strange things that had never quite made sense before. How Grandma's house always felt different from other places, not just old or creaky, but alive somehow, watching, waiting. How the temperature always dropped at least 10 degrees when you entered her basement, even in summer. How she never let anyone go down there alone, always claiming the stairs were unsafe or the lighting was poor. How she'd disappear every month for an entire night, claiming she was visiting friends, but all her friends had died years ago. My mother and I had always assumed she was visiting their graves, processing her grief in private. How our family had an unusually high rate of accidents, diseases, and early deaths, but only among the older generations. My generation and my mother's had been strangely blessed. Good health, good luck, good opportunities that seemed to fall into our laps. How my mother had suffered 7 miscarriages after having me, each one more devastating than the last. The doctors could never explain it. Everything looked normal, healthy, viable, then something would just go wrong. How my cousin Liam had died in his sleep at age 12, with no medical explanation. One night he was fine, playing video games, complaining about homework. The next morning, he was gone. The autopsy showed nothing unusual. How every family photo older than 50 years showed relatives, with the same haunted, exhausted expression Grandma always wore. A look of bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with physical age. I spent the rest of the night reading and rereading the will, cross-referencing details with family stories I remembered. Everything fit, every unexplained death, every mysterious illness, every stroke of good fortune for those who stayed away from the house. At 3:00 a.m., I finally closed the laptop and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those urns, 7 bone-white containers holding compressed evil, humming with malevolent energy in a basement chamber I'd never known existed. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Grandma's house for the first time since her funeral. It looked exactly the same. Gray Victorian with peeling paint, overgrown garden windows that seemed to watch you approach. But now I saw it differently. Not as the cozy family home where I'd spent countless Sunday afternoons, but as a prison. A beautiful, well-appointed prison that had held 3 generations of women hostage. I had the key from Grandma's purse, the one I'd used every Sunday for years to let myself in for our visits. But the house felt different the moment I stepped inside. Colder despite the warm spring weather, more alive somehow, as if it had been waiting for me. I went straight to the study and found the bookshelf Grandma had mentioned. When I pressed on the spine of Moby Dick, it clicked softly, and the entire bookcase swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The temperature dropped 20 degrees as I walked down those stairs. My breath came out in visible puffs. At the bottom was a heavy wooden door marked with a carved raven symbol, just as the will had described. Beyond it was a small stone chamber, with 7 pedestals arranged in a perfect circle. On each pedestal sat an urn, exactly like the ones in the photographs. They were humming, not audibly, but I could feel the vibration in my bones, in my teeth, in the deepest parts of my skull. 7 different frequencies, creating a harmony that made my entire nervous system feel like it was being tuned like an instrument. The urns themselves were beautiful in a horrible way, polished bone carved with intricate symbols, each one slightly different in size and shape depending on the soul contained within. As I stood there in that freezing chamber, I could swear I heard whispers, voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize, pleading, threatening, promising things I couldn't quite understand, but that made my skin crawl nonetheless. I ran back upstairs and called the attorney's office, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. Mr. Sterling, this is Olivia Miller, about tomorrow's will reading. I need to know something. Did you send me any documents early by mistake? Silence on the other end. Then, Miss Miller, I'm not sure what you mean. All documents are being held secure until tomorrow's appointment. We have very strict protocols about estate communications. Why do you ask? I received an email from your office yesterday with what appeared to be my grandmother's will. More silence. When he spoke again, His voice was sharp with concern. That's impossible. I handle all estate communications personally, and I haven't sent anything to anyone. Our system logs every email, and there's no record of any communication with your address. Can you forward me what you received immediately? My blood turned to ice. I'll bring it tomorrow. I hung up and raced back to my apartment. With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop and checked the email again. The sender was listed as A. Thompson 1847 at witching hour. Net. A. Thompson. Alice Thompson. 1847, the year Elainer made the deal. Grandma had sent me the email herself, from beyond the grave. I scrolled to the bottom of the message and found something I'd missed before, a timestamp showing when the email had been composed. It was dated 3 weeks ago, the exact day Grandma had died. She'd written this email on her deathbed, somehow programming it to send after the attorney received the official paperwork. Dee wanted to make sure I knew the truth before I had to choose. That evening, my mother called again. "I've been thinking about Grandma's house," she said, her voice strange and distant. "Maybe you shouldn't inherit it. That place always gave me the creeps. Too many bad memories." "What kind of bad memories?" "Oh, family members dying young, strange accidents, your grandfather vanishing during the war." She paused, and I could hear her lighting a cigarette, a habit she'd supposedly quit years ago. "Did you know Grandma's mother died at 46, and her grandmother at 38? The women in our family don't seem to live very long if they stay in that house. But Grandma lived to 71, didn't she? She looked 90 by the time she died. And she never left that place. Not once in 40 years. Never traveled, never dated after Grandpa disappeared, never did anything but sit in that house and waste away." After she hung up, I spent the night researching our family genealogy online. She was right. For over a century, every woman who lived in that house had died before age 60. Most died between 45 and 50, their death certificates listing various causes: heart failure, stroke, cancer, mysterious illnesses the doctors couldn't explain. But their children, the ones who moved away, lived normal lifespans, good lives, successful careers, happy marriages, healthy families. The keepers aged faster. The house drained them, but it protected everyone else. The next day, I sat in Mr. Sterling's stuffy office with my mother and cousin Caleb, listening to the fake will reading. It was exactly as Grandma had predicted. House to me, modest savings split between my mother and cousin, personal effects divided among family. Everyone seemed satisfied with the arrangements. Caleb made jokes about me, finally having a place bigger than a shoebox. My mother worried about the upkeep costs and property taxes. Mr. Sterling handed me keys and deed paperwork with a professional smile. "Your grandmother was very specific about wanting you to have the house," he said. "She felt you appreciated its history more than anyone else in the family." I signed the papers with shaking hands, knowing I was signing my life away, regardless of which version of the will I chose to honor. That night, I stood in Grandma's kitchen with both wills printed out, the fake one in my left hand, the real one in my right. Outside, storm clouds gathered, and the wind howled through the old windows like something desperate to get inside. I thought about my mother, who'd been trying to have another baby for 20 years, whose miscarriages had left her hollow and broken. I thought about my cousin Caleb, who just started his medical residency at Cleveland Clinic, whose hands would save countless lives. I thought about future children who'd be born into safety and prosperity because someone maintained the binding. I also thought about living alone in this house for the next 30 years, aging rapidly, never traveling more than an hour away, feeding blood to ancient murderers once a month while they whispered promises and threats into my dreams. I was 23. I could have a whole life ahead of me, marriage, children, a career that meant something. I could see the world, fall in love, grow old naturally, surrounded by people who cared about me. Or I could protect my family, like Grandma had protected me. I lit a match. The fake will caught fire first. I watched it burn in the kitchen sink until nothing remained but ash, then held the flame to the real will. At the last second, I pulled it away. I couldn't bring myself to destroy it yet. Instead, I walked to the study, pressed on the spine of Moby Dick, and descended into the basement with my first offering. I'd stopped at the CVS pharmacy on the way over and bought a small sewing kit, a plastic cup, and a pair of nail scissors. Following the instructions in Grandma's letter, I went to her bedroom and found the music box. When I wound it up and let Moonlight Sonata play through completely, pressing down on the ballerina revealed a hidden compartment containing an old brass key. In the basement chamber, the key opened a cabinet built into the stone wall. Inside were silver bowls, a ceremonial knife with an ivory handle, small glass vials, and leather pouches. Everything clean and well-maintained, ready for immediate use. The ritual itself was simpler than I'd expected. I pricked my finger with the ceremonial knife and let 7 drops of blood fall into the silver bowl. I cut a lock of my own hair with the nail scissors and placed it in one of the leather pouches. And I cried genuine tears of grief, for Grandma, for myself, for the life I was giving up, catching them in one of the glass vials. 1 cup of blood from the living, 1 lock of hair from the willing, 1 tear from the grieving. I set the offerings on the floor in the center of the 7 urns and spoke the words Grandma had written down for me. Ancient ones, bound by bone and blood, accept this offering. Grant protection to the Thompson line. Keep the bargain made in darkness, sealed in sorrow, paid in sacrifice. The humming stopped. For one terrifying moment, the basement was completely silent. Then, a wind that couldn't exist underground swept through the chamber, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into absolute darkness. The silver bowl rattled against the stone floor. Something touched my face, cold fingers trailing across my cheek like a caress. A voice whispered directly into my ear, "Welcome, Keeper." When I finally found the strength to turn my flashlight back on, the bowl was empty. The hair was gone. The vial had been drained. But the urns were still there, still humming their bone-deep harmony, somehow seeming more satisfied than before. I climbed back upstairs on unsteady legs, locked the basement door, and pushed the bookshelf back into place. That was 6 months ago. I've performed the ritual 5 times now. Each month, it gets a little easier. The voices whisper to me sometimes when I'm alone in the house, but I've learned not to listen. They promise me things: freedom, power, revenge against those who wronged me. They describe the outside world in vivid detail, trying to make me homesick for a life I can never have again. But I've also felt the house's protection. The job interview that led to a promotion I didn't deserve. The car accident I walked away from without a scratch when the vehicle was completely destroyed. The test results that came back clear when the shadows on the X-rays suggested something terrible. My mother got pregnant last month at 44, after 2 decades of trying and failing.